In my previous video on how to implement authentication in NestJS and issue JWT token, someone dropped a comment. Please do part 2 for password reset and email confirmation. And that's what we are going to do in this video. We are going to see how to generate and send token to the user email for them to confirm their account. The flow is similar for password reset. We send a token to the user email, and when they input a valid token, they should be able to perform such actions like confirm their account or change their password. This video is probably coming late for the person that dropped the comment. Pardon me, dear commenter. Sometimes life can get so busy when we have a number of things to attend to. For this email verification, we are going to have two endpoints. The first one is to send a token to the user email, and the second one is for verifying that token against the user account. There are different approaches to this. For example, instead of you can send a unique string, that long string, in a URL that the user can click and get redirected to the web application and get verified. Another thing you can do is to send an OTP, like six digits, to the user email, and they can enter that OTP and verify their account. We are going to go the 6-digit approach. We send an OTP to the user email, and they call the front-end application, or whatever the client is, can call this endpoint to verify the account. This is one of those tutorials where I walk you through the code. That means I already have the implementation, the code written, but I'm going to explain it step by step. I will start from this user's controller. Here we have the two endpoints I've mentioned. One for sending the OTP. This is going to be the /users/verification OTP, the very endpoint we have here. And the next one is for verifying that OTP, /users/verify/the OTP. Let's understand what is going on here before we go into the service method. First, I have this guard here that says no account guard. What does that mean? If I go to app.module.ts, you will see that I have this guard called account guard. What does it do? It basically checks the status of the user account. For example, if the user email is not verified, it's going to throw this exception saying account not verified. But it wouldn't make sense to throw that kind of exception when the user is trying to verify the account. We are telling the user your account is not verified, and the user says, okay, now I want to verify my account, but we also apply the guard that says your account is not verified. How then does the user get to verify their account? And that's why we are saying for these two endpoints, we don't want the account guard to apply, so we can allow the user to verify their account. And what does this decorator no account guard do? We have the decorator defined like this. Nothing really fancy here. We've seen in authentication the implementation of decorators. And in the guard, let me find this key. I'll go to the account guard here. You can see that we are checking if the decorator no account guard is applied. If it is applied to a route, return true. That means allow the request to pass. For every other route, check whether the email has been verified. Is public is also here because we can have some routes that are not protected at all. But pay attention to this one. For any route, we apply the no account guard decorator. Just allow it to pass. That's what is happening here. Then we have this at current user we implemented in the authentication tutorial. This will give us access to the authenticated user because I need the user ID. And after that, we call the user service dot generate email verification, which we are going to see in a moment. Before going to the service class, let's also understand what is happening here. Similar to the first one, we don't want to apply that guard that checks whether the account is already verified. Then here I'm also grabbing the current user because it is needed in this verify email method in user service. And I am grabbing the OTP that the user is going to send. This is going to be a path param in the URL. So this is not going to take any request body. You can put this in a request body if you want to, but I'm just going to leave it here. Now let's go into the user service and see the implementation. I will start with this generate email verification method. This method takes the user ID that is passed from the controller, whatever that calls this method. First, we want to check if the user exists. If the user does not exist, we throw an error. I'm not sure why I use this error here. Let's throw HTTP exception. For example, not found exception. We say user is not found. And then we generate an OTP. Now I'm going to explain this part in a moment. When we generate the OTP, we check if the user account is verified. Actually, this should come up here because it doesn't make any sense to generate OTP before checking if the account is already verified and throw an exception. So we check if the email is already verified. If verified, we reject the request saying account already verified. However, if the user account is not verified, we generate an OTP. We're going to see the implementation in a moment. And then we send out an email. We're going to see that also. Okay, let's talk about this generate OTP and send email. But before that, let me look at the structure I have here. I mean, you could have the logic to generate OTP inside here, and then the implementation for sending email inside here. But I don't think that is the best way to structure the code, especially for reusability. What I've done is to have a different module for token, things related to token, and then another one for messaging, like sending an email. That's why if you look over here, I added two new modules. This one is for messaging. Right now it sends only email, but you can send SMS, whatever message you want to send, can implement in this module. The next one is for verification related stuff, like to generate the OTP and to verify the OTP. Let's go into generate OTP. In this module, we don't have any controller because there's no need for that. We just have this verification.service.ts file. And inside here, I have two methods, actually three, but this one is just an idea, something you can do. I did not implement this. We have generate OTP, we have validate OTP. For generate, what are we doing? First, let's understand the entity file, because when we generate this OTP, we are going to save it in a database so that when the user inputs the OTP, we can fetch from the database and compare. That's why I have this verification.entity.ts file, which is going to create another table in our database. As usual, we have the auto increment primary ID column. We have the user ID for this OTP. And we have the token as another column. We have the date that the token is supposed to expire. For example, in the next 10 minutes, whatever you decide to set, and the timestamp column. That is it for the entity file. Then back here in the verification service, here we have the current date time. We're going to use it in a moment. Then next, I don't want the user to request the OTP too frequently. For example, the user requested in the past 5 seconds and fire off another request. This is not like a robust, exhaustive throttling, but just to give you an idea, it doesn't make sense for the user to request the OTP too frequently. To implement proper throttling that is more secure and covers more ground, you can take a look at the NestJS documentation on how to get started with throttling. But what I'm doing here is to see that the user wait at least for 1 minute before they can request another OTP. So I will check recent OTP by querying the database with the user ID and compare that the created at is at least more than 1 minute. So the user cannot request for OTP if it is less than 1 minute since the previous request. If the request is too recent than already defined, we throw this exception saying please wait a minute before requesting a new token. Actually, I think this should be unprocessable entity because the request is well formed. We understand it well. We are just not going to process it further. Then here we generate the OTP. This is a utility or helper function. I'll go into this helper function. Basically, it's going to generate random 6 digits and return it. And this is the implementation here. You can override the size. For example, you can say that you want your OTP to be 8 or 12, whatever. You can override this. With the function, with helper function, we generate an OTP. Then before we store that OTP, we want to hash it. So it is not a plain string in the database. This is just an extra step, extra security step. By the way, security is something really critical for web application. You are probably better off using a third party that is really reliable and has covered many grounds in terms of security than implementing on your own. But for learning purposes, let's continue. We can achieve something. So the OTP is hashed and saved in the database. We have seen how to hash password, just similar to that. We have the thing we want to hash, and this second parameter is to make it a bit more secure. After that, we create the record in database and save using the user ID and the token. Then we set the expiration time for that OTP. This is set to expire in minutes, but I have to convert to milliseconds, similar to the conversion I did here, because I want to save in milliseconds, and the comparison here is in milliseconds. That's actually the main reason. So I defined this member 15 minutes for the token expiration, and the minimum request interval that I mentioned before, it is 1 minute, and this is for sorting for the hashing stuff. So 15 minutes, you can set 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever suits your requirement. And finally, we save that in the database and return the OTP. Now back to user service. Here we have generated the OTP. The next thing is to send the email to the user. Talking about sending the email, I had to do something that is really straightforward. So here I call the method send email. I pass the subject, whatever you want to pass here. The recipient can be one or multiple, but I prefer to send to one recipient at a time. And then the message body, which I had coded an HTML here. You can use the template format whereby you have a template file if you want to, but I had to do something that is straightforward. Now we go into the method send email, which is located in the message module. Similar to the verification module, we don't need a controller here because there's no need for that. Here I have one method and a constructor. This is send email, and what does it do? By the way, I already have a tutorial on how to send email in Node.js using Node Mailer, and that is exactly the implementation we have here, although the syntax differs because this one is in Express. Yeah, this one is Express. I think I made another one for NestJS, but it's just similar. We have what is called a transport. With this transport object that we construct, we can call send email on it. And if you look here, it's just the same thing. First, I'm constructing the transport object in the constructor. With the transport object, I can come down here and call send email. Let's go through it step by step. For sending out email, I'm using the SMTP. And for this, I'm going to need some configuration that I'm reading from the environment variables. These are the configurations that you need to get from the email provider that you're using, whether you're using AWS or Google or Zoho, whatever you're using, you get your own credentials. For this demonstration, I'm using free credentials that are provided by mailtrap.io for testing purposes. You can go there and grab your own as well for testing. So you configure these environment variables, and over there, where the heck is it? Over here in send email, we just want to read those variables for SMTP configuration. This is the host. I already explained this in the other video tutorial on how to send email. This is the host that you get from the provider. The port should be a number, whether to use TLS or not. You should set this to true in production, but for my local environment, I'm going to leave it at false. And then you enter the username and password that you also got from the email provider. And with that, we construct the email transport object. Then down here, I have the send email method that takes a data, send email DTO. Let's see the DTO. In the DTO, I have the sender, that is address. Address is a type imported from Node Mailer. And then recipient, which is also address, but I decide to make it an array so you can send to more than one person at a time. But in our use case, it doesn't make sense to send to more than one person at a time. And then the subject of the email, which is a string, and then the email body, which is HTML. The text is a text version of the HTML. Okay. With that data, we just do object destruction here and grab the fields. And then we prepare the payload we're supposed to pass to send email method of the mail transport object. Again, this is imported from Node Mailer. You can see here, send mail options. It's imported from Node Mailer, and being TypeScript, we're already informed of the fields we can fill from who is sending this email. So if it is passed in the DTO, in the send email DTO, we use it. Otherwise, we use the default that is configured in our .env file. This is just my choosing. You can do whatever you want. These are not part of the credentials you get from the email provider. These are just defaults that I set here. Why does it keep disappearing? So if the sender is supplied, we use it. Otherwise, we use the default. Then the recipient obviously has to be supplied. The subject, which is a string, and this HTML body. As you can see in the example here, this is the message body. It says, "Hi, the name of the person. You may verify my app account using the following OTP." Just HTML, simple HTML. And after we've prepared the data, we just call mail transport object.send mail, like that, passing the data, and I return success. You can return whatever you want to. Okay, it's up to you. In case of an exception, I want to return null, so that the caller, if he gets something, it knows that it was dispatched successfully. If it gets a null, then it wasn't dispatched successfully. But I don't want to handle I don't want to go further to handle the case of not dispatched successfully, but just giving you an idea there. This is how we send the email. Before we go further, I would like to give this a try, that is the send email part, as we have seen the beginning from the controller down to the method of sending the email. So let's give this a try before we go into verification. With the application started, I will go over to Postman, and first I will need to be authenticated so the application can understand who is making this request. Remember, from the, let me minimize this, from the controller, we should be able to tell the current user, the authenticated user. So I'll come over here and log in first. Oh, I need to sign up. Just a moment, sign up and log in. The JWT token is automatically set in the environment variable. If you could recall, I think I mentioned here, I'm setting the access token. So I don't need to copy it over manually. Now I can request for the OTP. It says sending email in a moment. And if I go to the testing inbox I'm using, you can see I just got the email. It says, hi John Doe, you may verify my app account using the following blah blah. I will copy this guy. Oh, before we verify, let's see the implementation on how to verify the account. So head over to the code. We've seen the controller. I'm not going to explain this again. I'll go straight into verify email. The verify email takes the user ID and the token that was sent to the user. Before I do that, let me quickly check something. I'll try to send email again. It says, please wait a minute before requesting a new token. So this is what I was trying to explain about limiting the frequency of that request. Okay. Now let's look at verify email. It takes the user ID and the token. First, we once again grab the user. If the user does not exist, I want to return a consistent message for when the user does not exist and when the token is not valid. If the user does not exist, I'll return this message, invalid or expired token. If the user is already verified, then I'm going to return a message that says account already verified. And then here I'm going to check that the OTP is valid. And how do we do that? Using the token, the verification service again. I will go into the method validate OTP. The validate OTP basically queries the database using the user ID. And straight up, I want to check where the token has not expired. Okay, so I don't want to like retrieve a token and check because which of the token, in case the user has more than one. I just want to get the token where it has not expired. If we find a token that has not expired, the next step is to compare using bcrypt. We have seen this in the authentication tutorial. We pass the plain token here, the plain text, and then we pass the hashed token we stored in database. And bcrypt knows the way to compare hash. We don't decrypt hash. It's a one-way thing. We just compare. If the comparison is successful, we remove that token from the database and return it true. Otherwise, we return false. So this is going to return a boolean. Now, this extra method is just an idea because let's imagine we have tokens that are generated but not used or something like that. For example, that has expired, the user has to generate a new token. We want like a cron job or something that will be cleaning up those tokens every now and then. This is just an idea. We are not going to make use of it. Okay, so we have a valid token or not. If we don't have a valid token, we say invalid, we send the invalid message. Otherwise, we activate the user, we mark the user as verified, and this is the additional step. I'm setting the account status as active. Finally save the user and return true. This is just the walkthrough of implementing the verification. Now let's go back here and okay, let's try this again. By now 1 minute must have passed. Let's see our throttling thing in action. Now I can send another email because 1 minute has passed, but I'm not interested in that. Okay, I will copy the OTP and head over to verify. First I'm going to send invalid OTP. Just send some random stuff here. It says invalid or expired OTP. Let me pass the one I copied from the email and send. What the heck? I'm not sure why I still got invalid or expired. Maybe this new OTP is conflicting with the old one, which should be a bug. Let me try the old one to see if I have a bug. I'm going to copy and try the old one. Oh my god. So I have a bug here. I requested an OTP and requested another one. This one is seen as invalid, but the first one is seen as valid. Let me see if I can figure out why, but I'm not sure if I can fix this bug in this recording. I'll go to the database to see how many OTP that was sent. I have only one. Why is that so? I think somewhere in the code I'm not generating new one if I'm not saving the new one if the old one is active. Actually, an explanation that makes sense why I have one is because the other one has been used. Remember, when used, it gets deleted. So the problem is probably from the query, from my query when I'm trying to find an OTP to use. Let me check here. Validate OTP. Says find one. Okay, I think I know the problem. Because the two OTP are still valid, it just picks the first one. So this is a bug here. To solve this bug, I'm not really sure if the solution I'm going to use will introduce another bug. But what I want to do as a quick fix is to remove any OTP that has that user ID before generating a new one. So in the generate OTP, before I save the new one, I want to, what the heck? I want to remove all OTP that has the user ID. So I'll come here and say delete. Going to delete where user ID matches the user ID that is supplied. Okay, like this is fine. Delete all and save a new one. I didn't really take time to see what a potential issue with this approach, but I will leave it like that as a quick fix. Because of this, I'm going to do one more round of test. So I'll request an, actually I need to trash my database. Let me delete the database, stop and restart so it is recreated. Restart the application. The application is up and running. Let me clear this place. Then I'll head over to Postman. Oh my gosh, I need to sign up again. Send the request to sign up and log in and request OTP. I'll pause and wait for 1 minute to request another one. Okay, hopefully 1 minute has passed. First, I'll go here. I got the first one. Let's check the database before I send the second one. I'll open the database. And right here we have one. Where is it? Okay, I think I need to minimize this. Yeah, we have one. When I send another one, it is going to delete all the existing ones. So I'll request OTP again, says sending in a moment. If I come back to the database, and how do I refresh this? I don't know how to reload this. Let me just close it and open it again. Open it again. So we have ID2. I think it auto reloaded. We have ID2 here. So this is the second one. Then if I go to the inbox, we have the second OTP. Now, if I try the first one like before, I don't expect it to work, obviously. I'll try to verify using the first one. So it says invalid. But if I try with the second one, I should be able to verify the account. Send, it is verified. All right, before we call it a day, I'm going to explain one common question that I get about email, sending email. So some people ask, how do I send to a real email address like at gmail.com? The answer is simple. Just use real credentials here. If you could recall, I said that I'm using test credentials provided by mailtrap.io. The way this one works is that all the email, whether you're sending to johndoe@gmail.com, Outlook, whatever, it comes to the same inbox for testing purposes. If you want to send to real emails, use credentials for sending to real emails. Use credentials from your email provider, whether you got it from the cPanel or from AWS or Zoho, whatever. Just put your credentials here, as long as they're SMTP credentials. The code implementation is already in place. All right, guys, this brings us to the end of this lesson on how to verify the user account. You can use similar approach for password reset. Send a token, validate it, and accept the password request payload and process it. I hope this makes sense. Until next time, enjoy coding.